Workflow in a garment industry. In the early 19th century, clothing was handmade and produced for the family by women. The first production of ready-to-wear garments was to complete the needs of sailors, slaves, and miners. The production of ready-made clothing became an industrialized profession with the invention of a practical and commercial sewing machine in the 1850s. The ready-to-wear industry grew rapidly from the 1860s as a result of increasing mechanization and technologies. Garment industry is second largest industry in India. The work in an apparel industry strand with the production of fibers, yarns and fabrics, and then the construction of garments. Here we are discussing only about the garment production part. In a garment export house, activities includes number of processes from order receiving to dispatching shipment of the finished garments. Departments are set up based on the group of activities to be performed by a team of people. Based on present apparel industry, garment manufacturing departments are categorized as Pre-production department. Pre-production process includes sampling, sourcing of raw materials, approvals, PP meeting, etc. Production department. Production processes are cutting, sewing, etc. Post-production department. Thread trimming, pressing, checking, folding and packing, shipment inspection, etc. Auxiliary departments. To run the factory smoothly with production departments, one needs to set up some auxiliary departments. Functions and activities of different sections. Activities of different departments explained here are followed by garment export houses as well as domestic garment manufacturers. Merchandising or marketing. Merchandising department works as a mediator in between factory and buyers. This department is responsible for marketing the products made by the factory. Usually, large brands have buyers' houses at different countries. They buy the products through these houses. All these communications with the buyer or buyer's house and the manufacturers are done by the merchandisers. Large factories have more than one merchandisers to manage different sections of the industry. In bigger factories, merchandising team is given specific responsibilities as sampling or marketing merchant and production merchant. Merchandising department activities are communicate with buyers and keep good relationship with customers, conduct pre-production meeting, scheduling of pre-production and production activities, develop and review garment samples, product costing, preparing bill of material and fabric indent, sourcing of raw materials, provide quality approval, prepare production file and execute orders, providing after-sales services. Designing, pattern making or CAD. Apparel design department is responsible for product development. Garment designs are developed according to the buyer's requirements or current fashion trends. Design department focus on developing designs in similar garment categories the company does its business. Pattern making and digitizing patterns to CAD is also done by design department. The designs are then sent to buyers with all the details about the production to the buyers. The documents which contains a sketch of the garment, style, details of materials required and construction details are called tech pack. If the buyer accepts and approves the design, the next process starts. Main activities of design departments includes: designers develop new design collection in every season as per the latest trends after conducting market study and fashion forecasting, pattern making and pattern grading, garment fit checking and correction of patterns, incorporate buyer's comments on samples, marker planning. Sampling department. Sampling department makes all kinds of samples that need to be submitted to the buyer. The buyers generally places the order after they are satisfied with the quality of the samples. The samples decide the ability of an exporter. The buyer will access the exporter and his organization only by the samples. By doing sampling, the exporter can estimate the yarn consumption for developing the fabric, a clear idea on costing, and moreover, the manufacturing difficulties. The first sample prepared is called proto-sample. If it is approved, then some other samples like fit sample, graded sample, salesman sample, etc. are made. In small size factories, pattern making and sampling is kept in one department. Sampling department's activities are: reading garment spec and understanding workmanship of the garment, assisting in preparing bill of material for the same, calculating fabric consumption, making garment samples by following complete processes of cutting, sewing, finishing and checking. Prepare quality inspection reports. Fabric store, sourcing, trims and accessory store. After receiving purchase order from the buyer, merchandiser plans and issues purchase order for buying raw materials like fabric, buttons, thread, and for dyeing, printing, embroidery and other accessories. The fabric store is handled by fabric in charge, and the in charge is assisted by a team of helpers for loading and unloading fabrics and issuing fabric to cutting department. Small size factories, fabric and trim store are headed by the same person. Garment factories receive fabric from overseas textile manufacturers in large bowls with cardboard or plastic center tubes or in piles or bags. These are stored in racks with tags. Quality inspection is also done to ensure that the quality of the fabric meets customer standards. These raw materials are checked for color, quality and then approved by the merchandiser. Fabrics that fail to meet customer standards are returned to the textile manufacturer. Following are the major activities of the fabric store. Receive raw materials like fabrics, trims, accessories, etc. Checking of grade and finished fabric. Fabric inspection is carried out by both fabric manufacturers and garment manufacturers. Fabric inspection is the process of checking the fabric sheet for defecting faults in the fabric and preparing an inspection report. In fabric inspection, fabric rolls are opened and passed through a fabric checking machine, having the light under the fabric, and the fabric checker does the visual inspection of the fabric. At the end of checking a fabric roll, inspections report is made for that fabric roll. For inspecting the fabric, garment units use inspection systems like 4-point system, 10-point system, etc. Dimensional accuracy in width and length is also checked. Prepare shade band for dyed and printed fabrics. Basic testing of physical properties of fabrics. Fabric dyeing. Fabric reconciliation. Fabric reconciliation is a process of fabric analysis, which means how the total purchased fabric is used by a factory. What percentage of the fabric is actually used to make garments? What percentage of the fabric is left after shipment as a dead stock? And how much fabric is lost as wastage? Checking of trims and accessories in terms of quality and quantity. Maintain inventory record for fabrics, trims and accessories. Fabric, trims and accessory issues. Communication with raw material supplier. Production Planning and Control, PPC department. This department is responsible for planning and scheduling orders. Production planning and scheduling of activities are essential to procure raw materials on time, complete production activities on time, and able handover shipment on time. Small size factories do not keep a separate department for production planning. Merchandisers do the planning of pre-production activities and production head prepares a production plan. Following activities are carried out by the PPC department. Task scheduling, material requirement planning, estimating quantity and costs of production, capacity and line planning, loading production, production follow-up and execution. Spreading, marker planning and cutting department. This department is responsible for cutting of fabrics and feeding sewing department with cuttings. This is one of the major part in production process. Fabric inspection is also carried out in this department. Spreading. In spreading, the required number of plies of fabric are correctly aligned as to length and width and without tension. The number of plies in each spread is dependent on the fabric type, spreading method, cutting equipment, and size of the garment order. This saves time, cost of cutting, and cost of materials. Marker planning. The amount of fabric consumed per garment and the total profit of the garment unit is decided by the marker planning and marker making. This can be a manual or a computerized technique. The length and width of the marker is very important here. Based on this marker only, the spreading length will be decided. Markers produced on paper are fixed to fabric with pins, staples or on an adhesive paper which is heat sealed to the top layer of the fabric. The fabric consumptions and fabric wastages depends on this marker making. The industry has always paid great attention to marker planning. Any reduction in the amount of cloth used per garment leads to increased profit. Cutting. This is the major operation of the cutting room. The fabric is cut to the shape of the garment forms as per marker plan, using either manually operated cutting equipment or a computerized cutting system. Manually, this is done by cutting masters. Manual cutting operations are carried out by straight knife cutting machines. numbering and bundling. Bundling and numbering of each garment sections are done for easy and accurate handling in the sewing section. Layer numbering is one of the cutting room processes which is taken place after cutting a marker. In this process, each garment component is marked with the serial number of the lace in the cut. Normally, the numbering code contains garment size, marker number, and layer sequence. Bundling is the process of arranging garment components from the cut stacks after layer cutting and making a bundle with a member of garment pieces. Normally, using a rope or a fabric stripe, number of garments are tied together to form a bundle. Cutting department set up with cutting department head, cutters, spreaders, quality checkers, and helpers for sorting, ply numbering, and bundling. List of activities of the cutting department is as follows: fabric receiving and checking, cut planning, fabric spreading or layering on the cutting table, marker plan setting, cutting, sorting, bundling, and numbering of garment parts. Printing or embroidery department. This process is not compulsory. These are done only if the particular style demands printing or embroidery. This is done on the required part of the garment. The work is done according to the sample approved by the buyer. For this, manual and computerized machines are used. Fusing department. The fusing process is one kind of alternative method of fabric joining which is vastly used to attach the interlining. Generally, fusing is done by continued fusing machine where heat is applied from both sides of the fabric. Sewing department. Main jobs of the sewing department are stitching of garment. In the sewing floor, various types of production systems and line layout are used. Stitching line is arranged according to the design. The bundled garments are transferred to different line as per the arrangement. Power operated machines, preferably batch system, is used to get uniform quality and better productivity. Production in charge will be responsible for the sewing operation. He must know quality aspects in every stage, guide tailors and supervisors to get the work done at satisfactory level and to meet the targets. Stitching is done as per the specification given by the buyer. Sewing machine operators receive a bundle of cut fabric and repeatedly sew the same portion of the garment and passing that completed portion to the next operator. For example, the first operator may sew the collar to the body of the garment, and the next operator may sew a sleeve to the body. Line supervisors check and correct the works carried out in each line of workers. Quality assurance is performed at the end of the sewing line to ensure that the garment has been properly assembled and that no manufacturing defects exist. When needed, the garment will be reworked or mended at designated sewing stations. labor-intensive process progressively transforms pieces of fabric into designer garments. Additional to sewing machines, attachments, guides, folders are required for special operations. Machines like double needle, feed of arm, buttonhole, and buttoning machines are also required. Major tasks of this department are as follows, but not limited to these only: line setting, garment stitching, ironing garment components, checking of stitched garments, stitching alteration.